Hello. So today we will talk about object-oriented programming. Objects are things that exist in the real world, such as an online movie rental or a credit card transaction. For this lesson, we will define an object that represents a person. To create a person object, we need to create a definition for the person, and we do that by writing a class declaration. So here we have a class declaration for a person. The class definition will contain two things. One is the attributes or the variables that belong within the person object, and the methods, which are actions that the person object can take. So let's create some attributes. So the person would have a notion of an age, so we will use an integer to represent an age. And by default, the age will be set to 0, so it'll be a newborn person. The person might have a name, so we will use a string to represent that. And let's say by default, the name of the person might be Jane Doe. And lastly, the person would have a sex. Next, we will define special methods, which are called constructors. These are methods that are used to create the object. They don't have a return value. You'll notice it just starts with the name of the object as the method name. This particular constructor does not take any parameter, does not have a body. We can define more than one constructor. So for example, we could define another constructor that takes just the name of the person. And once that name is passed in, we set the attribute name to be the name that is passed in. We could define a third constructor that takes all three values. And in this case, it sets all three values. All right. Lastly, we'll define a new method that takes an action on this object. In this case, we will just define a method prints the different attributes for this object. So this method, it does have a return value. It doesn't return anything because this is just printing the attributes. It's called show. It does not take any parameters, and all it does is prints the object. So here we are printing it in square brackets. We're printing the name, the age, followed by the text to years, and then the sex at the end. Okay, so now let's go to our main method and create this object using the three constructors. So we would create it as follows. We have a new type called person, and let's name our first person P1, and we will create using the default constructor. The second person P2, we would create and give it a new name. And lastly, we will create P3, which uses our last constructor that takes all three arguments. Now, finally, let's use a show object to see each of these objects. So we say P1 show, P2 show. Now let's compile this. Now you'll notice that unlike before, we're getting two class files. First one is for the person class, and the second one is for our program class. And let's run this. There you go.